Chapter 3. Under Their Thumb. Will sat shackled at the defendant's table in a cold, sterile courtroom. His orange jumpsuit felt heavy against his skin, the cuffs digging into his wrist with every slight movement. Across the room, a silver-haired man in an immaculate suit sat with an air of detached authority. His Lazarus Institute lapel pin gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, a silent reminder of the weight the corporation carried in this city. The prosecutor's voice droned on in the background, but Will barely registered the words. His mind was a storm of conflicting images, fragments of the heist, flashes of blue light, and the sharp sting of the syringe. Every time he tried to piece it all together, the memories blurred, slipping through his fingers like smoke. What the hell did they do to me? And that's why, Your Honor, the prosecutor said, his tone clipped and precise, we believe a maximum sentence is warranted. Mr. Kane and his accomplices not only trespassed, but directly targeted the Lazarus Institute, a pillar of this community. His actions put lives and critical research at risk. Will clenched his fist beneath the table. He wanted to stand up, to shout that they weren't heroes saving the city. They were the ones bleeding it dry. But the words wouldn't come. The judge, a stern-faced man with weary eyes, turned to the Lazarus representative. Mr. Vance, would the Institute like to add anything? The silver-haired man, Mr. Vance, rose from his seat with deliberate grace. He adjusted his tie before addressing the court. Here we go, Will thought, jaw tightening. Your Honor, criminals like Mr. Kane need to be made an example of. His voice was calm, almost pleasant, but there was an edge beneath it, a quiet menace that sent a chill down Will's spine. The Lazarus Institute is the backbone of this city, Vance continued. We provide jobs, medical advancements, and hope for a brighter future. Theft from our facilities is not just a crime against us, it's a crime against Sunspire itself. Will's jaw tightened as he glared at the man, who met his gaze with a faint, smug smile. Furthermore, Vance added, turning his attention back to the judge, Mr. Kane's actions demonstrate a complete disregard for the law and the welfare of this community. We ask that the court impose the maximum sentence to send a clear message. Sunspire will not tolerate such reckless and dangerous behavior. The judge nodded solemnly. Thank you, Mr. Vance. He turned to Will, his expression hard. Mr. Kane, do you have anything to say before I issue my ruling? For a moment, Will considered speaking, telling the court about the strange cylinders, the syringe, the things he couldn't explain, but one glance at Vance's cold, calculating eyes told him it wouldn't matter. Lazarus owned this city, and nothing he said would change that. No, Your Honor, Will said quietly. The judge's gavel struck the bench. I sentence you to 10 years in prison with no possibility of parole. The words hit Will like a sledgehammer. He barely noticed the bailiff pulling him to his feet, the cuffs biting into his wrists as they led him toward the door. As he reached the edge of the courtroom, he glanced back one last time. Mr. Vance remained seated, his faint smile still in place. Memories on the inside. Prison was a cold, unrelenting machine, grinding down everyone it touched. The clang of metal doors, the hum of fluorescent lights, the shouted arguments, it all blurred into a dull, oppressive noise that Will couldn't escape. But it wasn't the prison itself that haunted him. It was the dreams. Will lied on a thin, uncomfortable cot, writhing and gasping for air. His body was drenched in sweat, his hands trembling as he gripped the edge of the bed. The images came in flashes, the cold metal table, the harsh, sterile lights above him, the sharp sting of a syringe in his skin. This one's different, a voice had said faintly. He can take more. And then the creature, hulking and grotesque. Its glowing alien-like eyes burned into his memory, and its guttural growl echoed in his ears long after he woke up. Suddenly a voice snapped Will awake. You good, bro? Will turned to see his cellmate, Johnny Ray, sitting up on the other bunk. Short but stocky, with sharp features and a casual confidence about him, Johnny Ray had been his cellmate for almost a year. Despite his rough edges, there was something about him that Will trusted, maybe because Johnny Ray never pried too much. It's just bad dreams, Will muttered, rubbing his face. Nah, homie. Dreams don't make you shake like you're getting electrocuted. That's something else, Johnny Ray replied, his tone half joking, but his gaze serious. Will didn't respond, his thoughts racing as he tried to make sense of the flashes in his mind. Before he could say anything, the clang of a baton echoed down the hall. Chow time, a guard barked. Johnny Ray stood, sliding a makeshift shiv from under the thin mattress of his bunk. He stretched lazily, sliding it into the band of his pants, and nodded toward Will. "Come on, let's eat." Will followed him out of the cell, his body still trembling as he replayed the fragments of memory over and over. Keith's loyalty. The year was 2045. When Will stepped through the prison gates, the outside world felt unreal. The sky was gray, thick with smog, and the cold breeze that hit his skin sent a strange shiver through him. He had spent 10 years trapped behind bars, his days blending together in a dull, lifeless routine. But now that he was free, everything felt wrong. The city had changed. Or maybe he had. But one thing hadn't changed. Keith was there waiting for him. The battered old sedan sat idling just outside the gates, its engine giving off a low, familiar hum. Leaning against the hood, arms crossed, was Keith, looking almost exactly the same, except for the exhaustion in his eyes. Will smirked despite himself. "Your mom's car? Damn, I thought this thing would have died years ago." Keith grinned, patting the hood. "Nah, this baby's still going, and she'd kill me if I scratched it." He reached into the car, grabbing a crumpled takeout bag, and tossed it to Will. Will caught it, his fingers tightening around the warm package. He knew that smell instantly. His eyes widened. "You got me a breakfast burrito, bro? From Patty's?" Keith chuckled. "Figured you'd want something decent. I can't even imagine what they were feeding y'all in there." Will ripped the foil open, his mouth practically watering as the rich scent of seasoned eggs, melted cheese, and crispy bacon hit him. Without a second thought, he dumped the little container of green salsa straight into the burrito, the spicy liquid dripping onto the foil before taking a massive bite. The first taste hit him like a wave of nostalgia. He groaned through a mouthful. "Yo, Keith, you have no idea how much I miss this." He swallowed quickly and took another massive bite. "You a real one, fam." Keith shook his head, laughing. "Slow down, Will, you're gonna choke." But there was something genuine in his voice, a quiet happiness. Keith had never been the kind of guy to say much, but he had always been there. As they pulled onto the road, Will looked out the window, his stomach full but his mind uneasy. The streets of Sunspire were barely recognizable. Lazarus-owned billboards loomed over cracked sidewalks, flashing bright blue slogans promising a brighter future for Sunspire. But beneath them, people shuffled along like ghosts, their faces hollow. The entire block where his mother's house once stood was gone. "They took everything while you were gone," Keith said, gripping the wheel a little tighter. "Your mom's house, the whole block. They threw everyone into these Lazarus efficiency units, barely enough room to breathe." Will felt numb. "I knew they took the house, but—" He trailed off, his throat tightening. "Still feels like a gut punch seeing it gone." Keith sighed, running a hand over his buzzed hair. "Man, I still remember all the dumb shit we used to do at your mom's place, sneaking out the window when she wasn't looking, stuffing chips in the couch cushions so we wouldn't have to share." Will let out a hollow laugh. "She always knew, though. No matter how slick we thought we were, she'd just give us that look, like she knew everything we did before we even did it." "She was cool like that," Keith said quietly. Will exhaled, his voice heavy. "She deserved better than what she got." They drove in silence, the streets of Sunspire slipping past in a blur of flickering streetlights and crumbling buildings. Will stared out the window, his fingers absently crumpling the foil from his burrito. 10 years, locked away, counting down the days, believing that once he was free, things would be different. But as he looked out at the hollowed-out city, the Lazarus billboards casting their cold glow over broken streets, he felt the weight settle in his chest. He really hadn't escaped prison. He had just stepped into a bigger one.